Hello, and welcome to today's special event, Cooking with Comics. I'm Zach Wellhouse, Vice Chair of the ALA Graphic Novel and Comics Roundtable's Programming Committee, and I'll be moderating today's event. Before we begin, let me go over some technical details. Booklist offers closed captioning on all webinars. To enable or disable them on your screen, please look for and click the Show Captions icon on the toolbar. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of them at any time by selecting caption settings. The chat is open for today's event, but if you have any non-urgent questions you'd like to ask our panelists, you may submit them via the Q&A box, which can be found on the toolbar located on the bottom of your screen. To submit your questions, click Q&A and type your messages in the box that appears. We will do our best to answer any audience questions, and there will be time for panel questions at the end, but we'll also be sure to pass along any unanswered questions to our panelists after the webinar. And finally, Booklist expects all patrons to maintain an atmosphere of respect and fairness. Anyone who violates this standard of behavior, including engaging in any form of harassment, may at the discretion of the organizers be immediately removed, no dessert. We have a fantastic program for you today, but before we jump in, we have a brief update from Shantae Byrne-Simpson, incoming president of the Graphic Novels and Comics Roundtable. Shantae Byrne-Simpson is the director of the Youth and Family Services at the DC Public Library. She comes there from the New York Public Library, where she served as Associate Director of School Support and Outreach. From 2020 to 2022, she served as President of the Black Caucus of the American Library Association, where she spearheaded the collaboration with the Graphic Novels and Comics Roundtable on the Black Lives Matters comics readings lists. As an ambassador for libraries and youth librarianship, Ms. Byrne-Simpson is dedicated to connecting individuals with the resources and services of public libraries. She's particularly focused on working with at-risk teens, fostering a love of reading and learning through innovative programming. In addition to her leadership role at BCALA, Ms. Byrne-Simpson chaired the Committee of Diversity at the ALA. She also serves as a board trustee for the Freedom to Read Foundation. And in recognition of her contributions to the field, she was awarded the 2023 DEMCO Award for Excellence in Librarianship. Shantae?
Thank you so much, Zach. I appreciate it. And hello, everyone. The Graphic Novels and Comics Roundtable of the American Library Association is dedicated to supporting library workers in promoting, collecting, and programming around comics and graphic novels. Since its founding in 2018, GNCRT has served as a vibrant community for advocates of the format, emphasizing equity, diversity, and inclusion in graphic literature. Members can explore opportunities to participate, and these opportunities will be shared in the chat through the Get Involved page, which includes information on committees and a link to the volunteer form. The Roundtable also offers a wealth of tools and resources under its Publications and Resources section, including the Best Graphic Novels for Adults and Best Graphic Novels for Children list. We also have curated collaborations like the one Zach mentioned with the Black Caucus of the American Library Association, and now our newest one with Reforma. And we have an Addressing Censorship Toolkit. In addition, the Panels and Programming Archive features a rich selection of past webinars, author talks, and professional development events. So join, get involved, and share the resources of GNCRT. Thank you, and enjoy the discussion.
Thanks, Shantae. Now it's time to introduce our panelists. Deb Aoki writes about manga for Comics Beat and Publishers Weekly, in addition to being one quarter of the weekly podcast Mangasplaining, a show that introduces Japanese comics in English to new readers, with co-hosts Chip Zdarsky, Christopher Butcher, and David Brothers. Deb is also a comics creator, user experience designer, and illustrator based in the San Francisco Bay Area. Heidi Knuth is the Assistant Department Head of Youth Services at the Bloomingdale Public Library. She has worked in various capacities for over 22 years and served on or chaired several communities for the Illinois Library Association and the LA, as well as in mentor capacity and in professional organizations. She's been the youth graphic novel selector at her library for over 12 years and incorporates them and cooking into as many programs as possible. Vivian Trong is a British-born Chinese artist from London. She's the illustrator behind many books and graphic novels, including the ALA 2021 Best Graphic Novels for Children middle grade series, City of Dragons, The Awakening Storm, the manga-inspired teen series, Cooking with Monsters, Beano, The Day the Teachers Disappeared, and her latest cookbook graphic novel, Buddha Jumps Over the Wall, and Other Curiously Named Classic Chinese Dishes. Outside of books, Vivian has been the UK's official World Book Day artist, a charity that promotes reading for every young person and child. She is also featured on the BBC Live Lessons, CBBC's Quentin Blake's Box of Treasures, and has collaborated with many community projects held by Riot Games. Thank you all so much, and thank you everybody for being here. Let's talk about cooking and comics. So let's start with a general question to kick things off. What do we like? Why do we like reading about things that make us hungry? In library land, this is often called the appeal factor.
Well, I'll jump in. I'll say that food is just an invitation and a window to another culture. And also something generally, I mean, I think almost all of us love. I mean, it's something that we all have in common, no matter where we come from or how old we are, male, female, whatever. I mean, food is a source of pleasure and comfort. So I think it's no matter what kind of food we're reading about, it's something that I think we all have in common.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's also just another form of escapism. Like, we don't necessarily have access to the foods that we see on the page, but we can dream about it. Just like how we read like fantasy books or romance books or whatever. Like, it's also just like a form of pleasure, just being able to like imagine these kind of foods and what they might taste like.
Yeah, I was going to say, in addition to the universal appeal, it's kind of very low entry point. I mean, we start talking about food even before we're reading picture books, but I work mostly with kids, and food is everywhere, whether it's, the very hungry caterpillar or, if you give a mouse a cookie, it's just everybody can find food accessible from the very youngest ages. And that's something that doesn't go away. One of the things that we notice, particularly in libraries, is that there's ebbs and flows, with interests, with attendance at programs, whatever it is. And food is consistently something that will bring people in of all ages, even if, they might not attend for a different program. Food is something, and graphic novels too. And combining the two is just a recipe for success. But it's something that has a sustained interest across all age groups.
Definitely, yeah. You're sounding a little crunchy on your audio, Heidi. Do you have a headset or something that you can plug
I
in?
can work on that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm curious about the community and the escapism aspect because it seems like there are lots of different genres of food and cooking comics, and some of them are very much about the competitive aspects or the not the pleasure. How does that complicate things?
I mean, I think we all watch Food Network, right, where they have cooking competition shows, and it makes, brings the drama up, right? Like, they have a time limit, and then they have to use a limited amount of ingredients, or, or they're competing for a prize, and so those things, add to that. Or sometimes these food comic stories will have some kind of dramatic stakes, right? Like, oh my God, the restaurant's going to close, and it's going to be terrible for my family, and or I'm new to this place, and this is strange food. Or I'm in some cases like you're kind of in a out of your comfort zone, right? Like, for example, like Delicious in Dungeon, or say like a campfire cooking in another world. Like, they're thrown in this other world and they have to eat, so they have to figure out how to make food out of what they find. So
Yeah, in my graphic novel series, Cooking with Monsters, just show it here. It's set in a fantasy world, but there is like we also have added that kind of shonen like competitive aspect to it. So it's about these kids who are they attend this school to learn how to be warrior chefs, so they have to like fight monsters and cook as well. So they have to learn both. So it's like a fun balance, like learning, like showing all those like action scenes, but also like showing like the good side of like just cooking too. I think it's always like a really fun balance, like seeing that. I used to really love reading Yakitate Japan, which is all about like making bread and everything. I mean I never really had much interest in bread until I read that book, and they made it so fun. And because they had like those competitions as well, it just really brought to life to something that just seems almost mundane until like, you know, when they really like focus in on like having like different textures and shapes and what that can do to like just something like bread. I think so the main character, he has like something I always think about this, like he has the hands of the sun, so that's why his hands are like really warm, right? And how that can actually just affect like his dough, like what he makes. So I just think it's really fun, like bringing those like kind of fantasy aspects to like food and making like competitions out of it.
I think Yakitate Japan was my first food in the anime and manga world too. It might have been Cooking Master Boy, but it was very close.
Yeah, yeah.
So talking about thinking about the animated aspect makes me think right away about the sensory experiences. What kind of sensory experiences are unique to food comics? How do we deal visually with the depiction and the appeal of food? Because it's paper, you can't smell it, you can't lick it.
I think something like with comics is like you can kind of show like colors that might not actually appear realistically well food, but it might look really like enticing on a page just because it's so bright. But where if you saw that in real life, you might be thinking, oh, this got a lot of food coloring in it, right? So yeah, I think it's like that fantasy aspect again. Like yeah, like I'm showing here, like this is like the characters cooking. You can see like it's quite bright on the page, but if you saw that in real life, maybe yeah, it's a bit different.
It's kind of
One of the
magical
things,
that, you know, that a lot of the manga is done in black and white, and it still makes your mouth water. Like it's
Yeah.
drawn in black and white line work, and you're still like, wow, I want to eat that.
one of my favorite things is the sounds. You know, in superhero comics, you have the pow, the kaboom, whatever. In cooking comics, you get the pop, the hiss, the
Oh
swish,
yeah.
all of those different like onomatopoeia kind of words in the text.
Gorgeous art, gorgeous art. It makes things look plumper, more succulent, really driving in that
Also, like I was gonna say, like Drops of God, which is a wine manga. Like, you know, like you don't like with wine. Wine is just liquid, right? So how do you make that look delicious? And in this particular manga, they use a lot of visual metaphors. Like, oh my goodness, like they're in a field of flowers when they're drinking a Pinot Noir, or like they're drinking a really powerful Malbec, and suddenly they see like, you know, Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen is playing in the background, you know? So it just kind of like I think what's really fascinating is that, like as you say, you know, these comics don't have, you know, the sense of smell, that's, you know, movement or whatever, but, you know, ways that they can show flavor and the tasting experience, I think, is really creative and fun.
definitely. I'm also reminded now of I don't know if it's necessarily a dichotomy or a dialectic, but often in cooking stories, there's community on one side and competition on the other, and sometimes community and uh, cooking and competition come together. But even when they don't, the community side of it shows the sense memory by evoking the past or the childhood or a family scene rather than saying, "Oh, this tastes spicy." This is my mother's hot pot, or this is my childhood dish, which reminds me of a gentler, happier time. So, as we've discussed, some comics do make readers feel hungry. Some of them make them feel tender. Some of them make them feel excited or fantastical. But other stories, other comics, take a step further and provide the recipes as well. So what opportunities and challenges are there in comics that provide recipes, or possibly in fantasy comics like Witch Hat Kitchen, uh, food alike? So like instead of saying basilisk meat, say if you can't find basilisk meat, get some chicken instead.
Yeah, I see that a bunch. Another monk besides Witch Hat Atelier or like what do you call it, Delicious in Dungeon, which does that really well. Like they'll say like, oh, instead of dragon meat, why don't you get a steak, kind of thing. But another one I would recommend is Drifting Dragons. Drifting Dragons is also from Kodansha, but it basically follows this fantasy dragon hunters. They're kind of like whalers, They seek out these dragons that fly in the sky in this airship, and then when they hunt down the dragon, they butcher it for its skin and fat and meat, and they eat. And it's a great delicacy, and you'll see them show different ways that they're cooking this dragon meat. It's really clever.
Yeah, how we took that with cooking with monsters is that because I think neither Jordan and I are like talented chefs or anything, but we tried to use like real life recipes and just kind of did replacements with like the food and vegetables. So it kind of almost gives you just inspiration. So if you wanted to try it at home, like of course you can replace the meats. Like you can't have basilisk meat, for example, but you could still make something that looks kind of like that. Even with my other book, Buddha Jumps over the wall, we actually drew in real Chinese recipes, but because the whole premise of the book is about the origin stories behind the books. I mean, behind the recipes, but naturally they back then in the past, like in ancient, like in China, they didn't have all these ingredients, but with the recipes that we put it in now, like we put in lots of like substitutes and also like vegetarian options. So I think it's really cool, like in food comics we can kind of always show like loads of different like varieties and have some like story behind it too.
I think there's also like there's several books that have recipes in the interstitials between chapters, like Food Wars does this, like Kitchen Princess does this, because the food is, like you watch the characters make it and they're having so much fun. You think, oh, I want to make that too. So in the case of Food Wars, for example, they work with a nutritionist who basically simplifies the recipes. So you're not going to make the super exotic dishes, like the really like molecular gastronomy type fancy dishes they're making, but something that's accessible and easy to do in a home kitchen with everyday ingredients. There's a kind of a, because food is kind of a big part in a lot of these things, there are actually cookbooks now, right? Like there's the One Piece Pirate Recipes cookbook. So you can cook like Sanji for the rest of the Going Merry crew, or there's a My Neighbor Totoro official cookbook now. Ghibli films are famous for their mouth-watering food. So I think there's just a ton, and of course you've mentioned Witch Hat Atelier Kitchen, and all kinds of, dishes that are, like you'll read it in webtoons, like Korean comics, and you'll read it in manga, like, oh, wow, I want to make omurice, or I want to try, there's another manga called Uma's Kitchen, there's another Korean comic called Uma's Kitchen that talks about making kimchi as part of the plot. So I think it's what I love about food comics is that it invites you to take your involvement in the story one step further by trying to cook and actually taste the food you're reading.
Yeah, it's a great way to promote engagement with the text, especially with a group. It also, in my experience, is a really great way to, like you said, simplify the recipes, let people kind of put their own spin on it, and also, at least with younger people, there's sometimes a tendency to perfection, like, oh, it doesn't look exactly like the picture, or if you've got a food stylist or a photographer, it's not going to. But when things are illustrations, it's a little bit easier to be like, well, it's not going to look like that. That's a graphic. It's a cartoon. But it is just such a wonderful way to pull something out of the text or pull the readers in a very hands-on way that appeals to people who learn differently, who experience and take in information differently. So,
Yeah, so the food can be used, the recipes can be part of a narrative, or it can be in a book like Let's Make Dumplings, where it's a cookbook, but it's also a comic, so an illustrated comic. It is Buddha Jumps Over the Wall in a similar space, Vivian. I've not had the chance to look into it, but
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we provide names of different dishes. The reason why it's called Buddha Jumps of the Wall, because a lot of the recipes will have unusual names. So it's like ants climbing up a tree, beauty soup, like all names like that. And we have the origin stories behind those names, and then we follow up with a recipe. So I think it's similar. So like, let's cook dumplings.
excellent. So I wonder if these recipes then, Heidi, have you seen recipes directly taken from manga or comics used in cooking events at libraries? Everyone feel free to jump in, but as the library programming expert, definitely wanted to do some.
yeah, absolutely. I actually just had a ramen program on Monday where we pulled some stuff from different comics. We showed a clip from one of the Studio Ghibli films. And it was the most fun program I've had in a long time. Everyone was really engaged. They were reading picture books with text and graphic novel stuff and experiencing it through the videos. So yeah, I've definitely pulled that through. I'm looking forward to a couple programs where I pull recipes from, like I have Zips and Elu make hummus. I know that's probably a lot younger than many of the audience is expecting, but it does a really good job of explaining the recipe through the text, like step by step as it goes through, and then also providing, you know, the traditional recipe card thing. But yeah, I've used ones like that. I'm looking forward to doing more. It's really nice too because they can see the steps, and you, unlike with maybe a cooking video or watching a demonstration, you can take time and really look at each step. You can go back and reference without having to rewind. It's really, really helpful and fun.
I think also I've seen some people do things where they bring the packaged snacks, for example, or like tea tastings. There's a story called Matcha Made in Heaven, which is a romance story about a woman who goes back to her family's tea farm. And it's a really interesting look at the different types of tea, for example. So that could be a fun, kind of experience. And, other types of books that focus around tea, because tea is just hot water, right? So of course there's liability in hot water, but it's not like you have to bring a whole cooking plate, right? And make things like that could be fun. I could see things like sometimes I've seen like a bento, for example, like bento cookbooks where they make kara bentos. Like one of the things that you'll see in a lot of manga is like the parents will make fancy bento boxes for kids, and it'll feature their favorite characters and food. And so there's some cookbooks like that, and that's a really fun activity as well. Even just making rice balls, with different fillings is fun. There's a book called There's Something Wrong with Us, which is by the author who did Kitchen Princess. But it's a romance mystery, it's a murder mystery that focuses around wagashi, which is Japanese sweets, like mochi and manju and the fancy sweets. So that could be, read that and then you get to try some of the wagashi and tea. Or, but tea ceremony. There's all kinds of possibilities to incorporate this into library programming, even if you don't have a kitchen, place to cook.
Yeah, one of the things I've been on the committee for one of our state book awards, and I started having public library programming slides because we do a lot of programming with these books, and with the increase of graphic novels on those lists, it's been really fun to find ways to incorporate food and snacks and treats, because that's a big draw with any library program for these particular books. Whether it's just a tasting something, or like you said, the tea, or with the ramen, you just add hot water. We had some other stuff, but there's so many different ways that you can adapt. I noticed somebody in the chat mentioning, utensils, sanitation. That's definitely something to consider, but there's ways to do that.
I think it'd be really cool if we had more like events that incorporated like our favorite books or media and had like those kind of themed events around it. Like I'm just thinking about in Japan, you have like themed cafes after like mangas and anime, and then they have all the food kind of tied into like either food from the story or just maybe like inspired by the characters. We have something kind of similar here in London called, there's like this restaurant called Uzumaki, but they like, so it's like the name is inspired by Naruto, right? But like all of the food is like named after like different anime and manga. So I think it's really fun. It would be really fun if we had like more of like that, more events that like we can have, like thinking about like, I don't know, like some sort of food event tied to like Dogman or something like that, whatever Dogman likes. I don't know.
Oh,
there,
we
there
do
are
those.
lots of
We absolutely do those.
Yeah, that'd be really fun.
there are a lot
we
of
do Dogman, Wimpy.
I'm reminded of the time that my wife went to a cooking blog and made the absolute shadow ramen from the much loved, little known DS title "The World Ends with You," and there are lots of channels and
Oh my
blogs out
love.
there. Yeah,
Haven't
"World
heard.
Ends
I
with You"
wasn't
shout
expecting to
out,
hear
surprise.
that.
Lots of channels for video games and comics and stories and videos that do things very similar. I just wanted to loop back to Deb's facetious comment about tea just being hot water and leaf, because a few days ago I did a tea with a librarian event that was
Oh, wow.
a lot of fun with students at my academic library.
That's
So
lovely.
the idea was that academic libraries can be big and imposing and have this kind of fear of the institution. So sitting down and having tea and getting able to pick your own tea out of the chest and try some of the different options in a low stress setting is a chance to get the talking and the feel going. So we are definitely big fans of the food at events at academic libraries. But sometimes the extra step is making the connection to comics or making the connection to reading as well.
It's interesting because some of the food comics like won't have it written out as a recipe, but it is like step by step shown in the comics itself. Like one of my favorites is "What Did You Eat Yesterday" by Fumio Yoshinaga. It's a story about a gay couple. One is a lawyer; he's a closeted gay man, and his partner is a hairdresser, and they kind of like try to make meals that are economical and healthy too, because they want to stay looking good, throughout their 30s and 40s and beyond. And what's really lovely is that some of them, like I've made the dry curry from What Did You Eat Yesterday, just following the pictures and the instructions given in the dialogue, and how to chop things and how to serve things up. It's really tasty. I made it for my neighbor and she says, "What is this? Can I have the recipe?" And then I had to screenshot the pages of the manga to show her. So that's also a literacy thing, right? I mean, it's also one thing I've often asked to explain what makes manga unique and what makes manga special, right? And a lot of it is the creator and the author is both the author and the artist. So they have a lot of times you won't see a lot of repetitive dialogue or captions. A lot of it's in the pictures. So it's a very good connection between the words and the pictures. and a lot of times some, like they won't say captions like, "Oh, she was disturbed," right? It's just you can see it in their face, you can see it in their body language. So that's also kind of like I was working with another thing. I'm like, that kind of emotional content, visual emotional content in manga is also really good for people who are neurodivergent, for example, because it kind of shows how to be, how to look for these cues in people's faces, and how what they say sometimes doesn't match what they feel inside.
Oh, very, very nice. You've presaged my next question. Uh, what do people think about cooking as a gateway to talking about different cultures and in a broader context, uh, different experiences? Are there any risks here? I know that Vivian has mentioned real life food analogs in Cooking with Monsters. There are also real life cultural analogs.
Yeah, so like all of the kids in our in Cooking with Monsters, they come from different backgrounds and different cultures. So we really wanted to show how that like cooking and the food that they make really ties into like their just where they come from, and like just their culture, because we really really wanted anyone to pick up this book to like be able to relate to that. Because I think culture and food is just like, this is just like, I think food is probably the best way to introduce someone to another culture, right? So even I learned a lot from like doing Cooking with Monsters and learning about different cultures just from the food aspect. um I mean, for us, like I know, for me personally, growing up, like I've had like weird comments about my food before, even though like I don't know, like Chinese food is quite popular, right? But sometimes you still get like the weird commentary in there, and then you get some of the racist ones too. So I think we just really wanted to show like how um you know we can just like be more open-minded, and we can like show it through like food as well. And you don't have to be from any kind of background to like enjoy like different types of food. So yes, that's why we really wanted to help, like really wanted that culture aspect to like really shine through in Cooking with Monsters. That was really important for us there.
I had a comment in the thing about how do you deal with like things where there's strict food guidelines, like a need for it to be prepared and have it be individually wrapped. And one thing I was kind of replying in the chat was a lot of Japanese snacks are individually wrapped. And this is kind of an interesting cultural thing. But when you go visit somebody, you usually bring like a box of cookies or snacks or rice cakes or whatever. And a part of the gift is the presentation. And whenever I try to buy snacks to take to clients or friends in Japan, I'm always looking for individually wrapped stuff because that's it's considered better. I mean, it's like it's you put it on the table at the office, and they just like it more individually wrapped. So I'm from Hawaii, and so and we get a lot of Japanese tourists. So a lot of a lot of the food stores that are selling food snacks or souvenirs offer them as individually wrapped items, and that's in accommodation to the Japanese culture. So, so the good news for you is if you want individually wrapped, Japan's got you covered.
That's really interesting. I always wondered about that. Like every time I visit Japan, like why is everything wrapped? I felt like there was so much like recycled stuff. I had to like keep hold of it because there's no bins around either. No, but I think it's interesting because when I was growing up, I obviously got really into like anime, manga, and Japanese culture. But of course, a lot of like Japanese food also shares a lot with Chinese food. Like one thing I used to love this anime manga called Shakugan no Shana, and then the main
Oh,
character, she loved melon bread, right? And I didn't even know that there was like a Chinese counterpart, which is called pineapple buns. But it's just like their presentation and everything is so different. It's like they're so similar but so different. And I love like learning like more about my culture through just from like Japanese culture too, and like from books too.
I'm starting to get more into Korean comics now, and I'm like being introduced to all kinds of foods that I've never tried before, like tteokbokki, like the rice, the spicy
Yeah.
rice cakes, or like I mean, and the amount of, I don't know, the fascination with fried chicken is beyond belief. So like when I
Yes.
went to Seoul for the first time, that was the first thing I did. I had fried chicken. I had lots of fried chicken, and you know what? It was awesome.
Yeah, when you read like Korean comics, they have a lot of like they always eat a lot of instant ramen, which I always,
Yeah.
it's kind of associated with Japanese culture. But as I used to always think before I knew anything about Korean culture, I used to always think I want to try whatever their real noodles was, like not the instant type. And then I soon learned all their noodles is the instant noodles, but it's like my favorite. So that was funny to learn.
I think another mention in the comment is like about in a lot of manga, there's this thing where in Japan, the Valentine's Day is when the girls make chocolate treats to give to the boys.
Yeah.
And then the following month on March 14th, it's White Day, where the boys have to reciprocate and give a present back. So it's kind of different than America, where, Valentine's Day is more like guys are expected to give to girls, right? And a lot of the shoujo manga, key manga will make a big deal about, oh, I'm making chocolate. Oh, I'm making, it's like a big deal. So that could be something, that could be a fun activity, right? Like making chocolate gifts for your friends, like kind of how they do in those series. Yeah, I don't know. It's like, or even just showing maybe perhaps just even showing the ingredients. Like some of the ingredients in some of these books are exotic and different to people. So it's like, oh, here they are. Here's what they look like.
There's a question in the comments that speaks to the risks or dangers aspect of the question that's been on my mind, and I've just something that I always think about in terms of cooking as or food as a form of shallow tourism or cultural appropriation rather than as a celebration. The comment is, I had one university professor complain about how they were tired of her culture being reduced to funny smelling foods and wanted the picture books to be about not foods being different. So maybe this is a question for Heidi. Since you have the most in-library experience with programming, have there been any downsides to food-related programming or using food as a culture? Another possible example, one of my local libraries has a monthly spice club, which it sounds like an awesome low concern way of getting into providing spices and recipes for people who stop by every month, and you're not making things in the library, and that you get cultural lessons along with it, but the culture is not just the spice, but the spice is what you're getting.
I think that's a great example because like spices are full of smells and really tactile. Like Indian food, for example, is just full of amazing smells and spices and how they're used, And even sometimes like there's a lot of Asian food that even me as someone who grew up in Japanese American, sometimes like my mom just used the instant kind. And it's revelatory to me to see like, oh, this is how you make it from scratch, Like here's how you make dashi from scratch with, the kombu and the little dried sardines and stuff like that. Like, so even for people who are familiar with it, it's like sometimes being exposed to, what the real thing is like, because sometimes what we get as Americans is not the real thing. Like tacos, for example. Like I didn't have a real taco until I moved to the mainland from Hawaii. And no offense, I still like a good crispy taco shell Taco Bell taco, but a real taco that I had when in LA and Mexico was completely different. And that was just wonderful to know.
We have the comment Heidi. You might be frozen. If your internet connection is shaky, you can turn off your camera for a bit to save on extra bandwidth.
Oh, the candy sushi. Yeah, there's a pop and cookin like that makes kits to make like uses molecular gastronomy to make candy sushi and stuff like that. But there's all kinds of ways you can use like gummy ribbons, for example, or like you can use candy, different shaped candies as analogs to make fake sushi. And that's no cooking, but it's kind of fun and silly.
And it gets to that. I want to eat something while I'm here. I'm hungry. I'm looking at delicious food on screen, so let's put delicious food in my mouth as well. The cookbook displays at my local library are perennially the big ones. There's always a cookbook display, and then the rotating display of everything else. So
I mean, even if you just do very basic temaki, which is like you don't have to have the raw fish. You could just have the rice and the vinegar and nori or rice paper, and then you can put different things in it. It doesn't have to be raw. It can be cooked things, right? For example, one of the favorite dishes in Okinawa, which Okinawa has a lot of American military bases, is taco rice. It's basically rice with lettuce, tomato, cheese on rice. It's quite tasty, actually.
Interesting.
So yeah, I mean, it could be a really funny thing. Like, how could you make if you make your own sushi, but make it with your own flavor, right?
Yeah, I've seen like because my family, I grew up eating Vietnamese food, and some like recently I've seen people do variations of like the summer rolls, for example, which to me is like an abomination. But then when I really think about it, like I think they well actually no, for example, like Infidel Drums Over the Wall, there's like a recipe for these summer rolls, and it's not there's a vegetarian variation with like mango and something else. But I just thought, oh, you know what? Actually, that actually sounds really nice. So I do kind of think like, yeah, like sometimes when people change the original recipe too much, it might seem like, I don't know, like maybe like crossing the line here and there. But I don't know. I think the point of cooking is, like to experiment with different things, right? That's how we even have like these kind of recipes in the first place. And I'm one of those people who actually loves pineapple on pizza. I'm sorry, but like, so whoever did that first, they might be offending a lot of people, but I'm grateful for it. So I think it's fun with like comics because you can like show lots of like different experimentations, and like people can come up with so many like new ideas that you wouldn't even think of, and then people can kind of take that and go out of it and adapt those like ideas and recipes. Like even if there wasn't like a recipe in, but like if it was just like a fantasy like manga, like Delicious in Dungeon, for example, like they can adapt and like substitute and like create like whole new dishes through that.
I think it's just kind of, I mean, inspiring kids to be creative, right? And
Yeah.
your patrons to be creative or think like it's just sometimes just showing them the possibilities is it can be a lot of fun.
definitely. I want to save time for audience questions. So people in the comments start thinking of some, start sharing them. And in the meanwhile, for the panelists, what are some of your favorite food and cooking media that we haven't mentioned so far? We've mentioned so many. The comments are full of more. But for example, I want to give a shout out to Space Battle Lunchtime by Natalie Reese. It's uh, Iron Chef style intergalactic battle in space with food.
I would say a family style by Tin Pham. Um, Tin he's a Bay Area person. He's a Vietnamese American, and he wrote a really wonderful food-based memoir about the food that he had at key moments in his life from when he and his family came over on the boat from Vietnam to their first meal in America to when he became a citizen. It's it's really all kinds of food, and it's really a wonderful food memoir. Ken also regularly works with the food writer at our local public radio station, and he does a series of comics about the late night eats that he finds in the San Francisco Bay Area. And it recently got nominated for a James Beard Award. So do seek that out. I mean, I think if you show, perhaps an idea is if you show those kind of food memoirs and that, maybe encourage the kids to write their own food memoir comic, right? Like, what's a favorite dish that you've had that is really meaningful to you? And how do you make it? It could be something really simple, like, here's how I make spam musubi. And, like, here's how I remember my mom doing this, or like, we would go hiking and it would be in our backpack and stuff like that. Like, encouraging them to tell personal stories about food, I think, would be a really fun prompt.
Yeah,
Yeah,
one
I've
of
heard.
my oh, sorry, go on.
Oh, I heard of many libraries have done a living library project where you get community members who have office hours essentially to talk about their lives or their unique experiences, and bringing food into that just makes it more delicious.
Yeah, one of my favorite comics I would recommend is by Lucy Bryan. I believe that's how it's pronounced. She created a comic called Food Baby. It's a short comic with short box. Yeah. I love the art. It's about how when she was a kid, I think she had like vegetations that kind of blocked her sense of smell. So she never had like any interest in food, right? Until the doctors did surgery and took it out, and then she just was like, her eyes are like open to the world of food. Like, she got her senses back, and then she just got really obsessed with food. And I found that really relatable because I mean, I didn't have that condition, but I didn't really enjoy food that much as a kid either. Like, I used to be like crying on the floor in the kitchen whenever it was dinner time. But now I like love food. So I thought it's just like a really cute way to show like how everyone has like this different experience of food. Like, obviously there's lots of kids out there who don't really enjoy food. Maybe they don't have access to like good quality food either. So maybe they can also like write about those experiences. Maybe we can like help you know, bring those opportunities to them to try out different food, do different tasters. Like, I used to always love that at school whenever we had like taster days where we would bring in food from our culture, or maybe we try out different fruits or nuts and things like that. And we can always like make comments about that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I loved about growing up in Hawaii and living and working in Hawaii is potlucks. Potlucks are like and I watched how people would bring, their favorite dish that from and share it with people, and it always came with a story. Like, I did that when I worked in the Bay Area. I had a French colleague who taught us how to make chocolate mousse. I had an Indian colleague who said, "You guys don't have real Indian food. My mom will make you Indian food that'll blow your socks off." And then she brought it, and it was, wow, she was right. It was spicier and it was richer and better. So whenever I throw parties, I tell people it's a potluck, because a potluck, rather than catering food and stuff like that, a potluck invites stories. A potluck invites people to bring a little bit of themselves to the event. So, or another idea is like as a kid or teen prompt is ask them to interview their grandparents or an older person about their food, favorite dish to make or favorite dish to eat, and do a story about that. Like, I think our older generation tends to not share stories so much. So sometimes it's creating that excuse to have that interaction to be really rich and fun.
Definitely. And speaking of sharing stories, we have our first audience question. What are some of your favorite cooking manga/comics? And we addressed that, I believe. But the second part, how did your first experience with the genre influence you in curating your collections?
That's more of a library question, but maybe I personally just buy anything I can find in this topic because it's something I love to cook, and when I go to in another country, I also go look up for the food halls or the night markets and stuff. I look for where local people shop. I go to the supermarket, I find supermarkets in other countries extremely fascinating. So yeah, I just do it. I just enjoy it.
Yeah, I
Can you guys hear me okay?
oh Heidi's here.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe.
We're having
Oh,
Oh, I think she's still cutting off.
Yeah, you're still cutting off,
Can you
Heidi.
repeat the question? Type it in the chat. So sorry.
Okay, Heidi is type in her answer in the chat, and it'll be included in the email that we send out afterwards as well. Next audience question. What would you recommend for comics and food programs in areas that are food deserts or where incomes limit access to fresh foods? This is another real programming focused question, I believe.
I would say like even an experience, like you said, the spices, I think is a really interesting thing. Teas, different teas, and smelling them and trying them. And I think that's very, they're not perishable and they're not too expensive and can be really interesting. Trying exotic fruits like durian or dragon fruit, making smoothies with exotic fruits could be really fun. Yeah, I know it's a challenge, but there's also if you're looking for some of these foods, some of them are available through mail order, like for example. You can try that. Or I would say just maybe look at what you have available in your neighborhood, right? Maybe spotlight the food and produce that's available in your neighborhood. Some people do foraging things, right? Where they talk about the wild foods that they find.
Definitely. And my previous library job was in a food desert, and well, I didn't get to go ahead and do any of these projects. There is always the idea of tying more in with the health and graphic medicine side of food and cooking comics. So the comic Vivian mentioned is a very solid entry point into that. But you could also, as a way of introducing people to different flavors, use the comic as the easy or low pressure way of saying, well, I'm not being didactic about healthy eating, but here's a fun comic with some things that happen to be healthy and available in our area.
The other thing is like there's a series of books from Iron Circus, I believe, called the Poor Craft Guides. There's a Poor Craft Cookbook. There's a Poor Craft Guide to Living Well on Less. Those are quite interesting. And I don't think they're condescending either. I think they're just really practical and straightforward. They're kind of, they recognize the environment that you may be living in and what's available to you and how to make healthy choices even within that. Yeah, and this potato chip thing, that's a thing now. Like there's a lot of Lay's potato chips that are imported from Taiwan, China, that have all kinds of crazy flavors. Those are amazing. Some of them, like one is cucumber. What? But they're available from some stores. They're not cheap, but they're interesting. And sometimes, like I've bought back Kit Kats, and they have Kit Kats.
Yeah, the Kit Kats.
And then sometimes what I've done is I've taken them out of the wrapper and not said what the flavor is, and put it on a plate and say, guess what the flavor is. And yeah, the green one, it might be wasabi, so watch out.
I
I
was
actually mind
expecting
the soy
matcha.
sauce one. Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say like like sweets, candy. Like I think there are like especially if you wanted to try like Japanese ones, I'm pretty sure there's like the shipping services. I think like Boxu or something like that. Like they ship out candy if you wanted to try specifically Japanese ones. But yeah, I mean every country has different types of candy. If you can get access to that, that's pretty fun for kids too.
I'm just throwing a link into which is like an Asian grocery delivery service. Some of my friends in the Bay Area use it a lot. It's kind of an interesting mix of stuff. It's also an interesting excursion, to go to the different markets and try them out. I've gone to the Indian Indian food store here in the Bay Area, and it made me realize how people feel when they go to a Japanese market. It's like, oh, it just says it's a blah. And I went, what's a blah? And they go, well, a blah is just a blah. And it's like it was like I was expecting them to explain what blue was, And then I was struggling, like, what's the English word for like, there is none. So it's very humbling, right?
Yeah, always learning, lifelong learning. That's the goal. Well, I wanted to. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, I think it's really fun, like, comparing candy because everyone has a different. I find like different cultures have a different level of sweetness. Like, I think in Asia, like, they tend to have their sweetness is not too much, and I mean, I think in the Western world we have a lot of like fruit flavored things, but I think in Asia it's more like like taro, like red bean, like those like kind of
There's a
different
lot of
flavors.
sugar in American food. A lot of sugar.
Yeah, yeah, it is weird though, because I think in American candy tastes not like kind of not sweet compared to European candy. Like that's like it's like drugs to me. Like it's like it's really addictive. It's very sweet, like British and European candy. Like it's so different. But you wouldn't imagine it like to be like that.
Definitely at the Tea with the Librarian event, we started talking about teas. Very easy culture opening point to talking to students. Why did you come? I like tea. What kind of teas? What other things do you like to drink? Oh, root beer. And root beer got into it seemed like what the perennial comic comment when root beer comes up with, which is, oh, you can only get this in America, or in Japan, this tastes like medicine, or in Brazil, this tastes like medicine.
Oh, they can't
It,
stand it. Yeah. Like Dr. Pepper is disgusting to them.
It's interesting, huh?
so when the question is, what is culturally American or what is the real America? Maybe with root beer, you have the answer.
Uh,
We have some other good comments. A cooking series called Cooking on a Budget, Library Programming, about how to make nutritionally healthy foods with items that are easily available at places like Walmart or Target. We have a question about food or recipe comics anthologies, and we can respond to that in the follow-up reading list that will be released. But I see that we are coming up on a 2-minute warning, so
Another recommendation I would make is make a benefit cookbook. Have
ooh, yeah.
like, for example, in where I grew up in Hawaii, like a lot of times the churches will ask everybody in the church to submit a favorite recipe, and somebody will draw pictures, and then they'll bind it together, and it's a community cookbook. So that could be a fun way to engage your patrons, and maybe make it a fundraiser too. It could be an evening where people show off their recipes, and then sell the book. I think we can.
Make a recipe library, a zine,
Yeah.
collaborative event.
We actually do that among our staff and then give it away. Apologies for my tech issues earlier. We give it away as our community giveaway during the holiday season with recipes just collected among staff. I love the idea of doing it as a community-based thing.
And including with a story, right? Like every recipe can include like a paragraph or two about the recipe or some comments. It doesn't have to be paragraphs and paragraphs like most food cooking blogs, but I'm just saying, like food is community, food is communication, food is comfort, and that could be a really great way to showcase your community and get them involved.
Wonderful. Thank you to all of our panelists, all of our listeners. I know that we can talk about deliciousness all day, but we got to go. So, final announcement. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's video recording and a certificate of completion. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming events. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. This concludes today's webinar, and For those of us on the West Coast, it's lunchtime. So happy eating, happy reading.